And I messaged him, and I immediately was like, I will come get it in the morning. Like, I'll skip church. I will be there. And they were like, well, there's 3 other people on their way. So if you can get here first, she's like, you talked first. You reached out to me first. When I finally told her I was on the way, she's like, there's some other people that I told them that you were coming, but they're on their way anyway. And so I woke up. So now
there's a race.
Yes. So I woke up early Sunday morning and raced to West Virginia to get the trailer. And it had been used and abused and needed a lot of work, still needs a lot of work. But, it was a total game changer in actually being able to deliver the containers myself, pick them up, inspect them. If you can't do that, then it's very hard to ensure that you're getting a quality product to your customers.
All right, we're back with another episode of the Built to Rent podcast. But before we get into this episode, another special announcement from our special show sponsor, NPSA, National Portable Storage Association. And if you missed it, they just announced the details for their next annual conference at the Paris Hotel in none other than Las Vegas. This is an amazing experience. This year's show will be April 6th through April 8th. You don't want to miss it. I went to one a year ago. It was my first experience back in Washington, D.C. So I can only imagine what Las Vegas will be. They also announced their special guest speaker, Damon John. You likely know him from Shark Tank. But if you're a fan of entrepreneurship, you're a fan of rentals, this is the space that you definitely want to be. What's going on? It's Donald Boone with Boxed Up, and we're back with another episode of the Built to Rent podcast. And today we've got a special guest. I mean, they're all special, but Jack has this really unique story because he's one of those people who's always been an entrepreneur. Jack had a car washing business. Jack then later on started a landscaping business. Get this, before he even had a license to drive. So he'd have other people drive his equipment to the site, and then he'd carry out the task of landscaping. But now, after more than $100,000 invested into trailers, into a new truck, Jack now runs and is scaling Central Virginia Containers in the Richmond, Virginia area. And he really details and goes deep and is really transparent. It was awesome just to hear him talk about his story, about how his faith has guided him on the paths that he's taken, how one thing has led to another, and how he's never really been rattled or shaken by anything that has looked like too much. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we enjoy diving deep. Jack of Central Virginia Containers. Hope you enjoy. Cool. Well, perfect. I guess out of the gate, man, love the family pictures in the background. But maybe let's spend a few minutes talking about sort of your background, your history, your upbringing. Did you grow up in the Richmond area or whereabouts in the country did you grow up?
Living currently in the house that I grew up in. I'm the youngest of 7. So we had a great childhood here. It's 60 acres in Louisa. Moved away and got married, and my wife and I had a house in Beaver Dam, Virginia, which is 20 minutes away. We sold our house in the peak of the market last year. So we've been living
Congratulations.
Here. Thank you.
Cashing in.
Yeah. So we moved in here and, been making it work, and it's probably 100 and some year old house. So we've got several window units and things like that, making it work. But we're actually getting ready to move in a month or two. We bought a house again. So, right here in Louisa, born and raised.
So you got a lot of moving parts, man. So you've got 2 kids getting ready to move in a couple of months here. You're in a 100-year-old house all at the same time. You're scaling a company. I do want to get into sort of Central Virginia Containers, how it came about, how even the name came about, and sort of exactly what you guys do. But you hit on something that I don't want to gloss over. Youngest of 7. So, I mean, this house sounds like, full of life, full of energy. But I imagine sort of being the youngest in the family isn't always the easiest. You've got 6 other siblings. Did you feel like growing up was like was there always this entrepreneurial spirit? Tell me a little bit more about the house and your upbringing and sort of how you think that shaped you for the future.
Yeah. I loved being the youngest. I got away with everything. And I got to watch them and see what they got in trouble for and then not do that. But yeah, my older brothers, they're twins, and then it's 4 girls and then me. And so the boys, they left for college when I was like 5. those first 5 years, I don't remember all of it, but I truly loved that time of having everyone together. Then of course people going off to college and moving away.
Yeah, it's really the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, you're in a house of seven. I know I didn't grow up in a place where sort of being an entrepreneur, I didn't know what the word meant until, I was sort of well into my college years. But was that something that was established early that you guys were doing in the household?
Yeah, so not necessarily in my household. My dad he started his business. He was a consultant. I was young. I don't remember exactly when. He worked in D.C., which is a couple hours away. So he was away during the week a lot. There was another family that they had same number of kids as we did for a long time and similar ages. Their dad was a general contractor. So I spent a lot of time at their house with their family. I thought I wanted to be a general contractor for a long time. I can remember answering that question to people, this is what I'm going to be, a contractor.
Very specific GC.
Oh yeah, very, very specific. And in a lot of ways, some of the things that I do are similar to that. But, just naively not knowing what it was, I just knew I wanted to, there was always this, this rapport and this respect that I had, for, business owners and, but I didn't work for myself, probably year 7 of professional life. I didn't go to college. I started working when I was 17. I moved to Texas, and I spent
What part?
Huntsville, which most people,
Yep.
when I say I spent 11 months in Huntsville, they ask me what I did because there's like 15 prisons within 30 miles of Huntsville.
But they just assume,
Yeah.
I spent 15 months in prison in Huntsville.
No, so it was a summer camp that I worked.
So to clarify, not in prison.
No.
during that time
It was
period.
a summer camp. I worked on the maintenance team. I was 17, loved it. After that, I moved to Mississippi. Someone I knew was living there, and they had a container company, and they said, "Hey, if you move here, I've got a job for you. You can come drive my truck and deliver containers." So at that time, it was an '05 GMC dually with a bumper pull trailer, and I spent a year doing that, and I loved it. And it was it was great learning and great preparation for running my own business. There's a lot of lessons that I learned while working for him that I appreciate that I learned while working for him instead of for myself. But yeah, and when I moved back to Virginia a year later, I needed a job doing something. So I worked a couple different jobs in excavation, road work. I took a job doing masonry construction. I did that for 5 years. Hated some of it, loved a lot of it. Really great company to work for, great boss. Actually, the contractor that I was talking about a second ago owned half of the business, and so they're like a kind of couple businesses all under the the same office up the road. So I worked for them for 5 years and did a couple other things. And when I branched off to work for myself.
But before we jump into that story, I want to go back very quickly though. 5 years of masonry, I'm sure there's something there that we'll deep dive. But you mentioned lessons learned while you were effectively running operations and delivering containers for the general contractor down in Huntsville, Texas. Let's spend a couple minutes there before we fast forward to sort of branching out on your own. You're fresh out of high school. Why did you land on Huntsville, Texas? Would it have been easier to do something in Richmond, but you already sort of took a leap that a lot of people typically don't make, one that's halfway across the country. How did you land in Texas?
So, my sister Tara, who works for me, she currently lives in Dallas. But while she was through college, she spent her summers in Huntsville at this camp. And so, I knew college wasn't going to be for me. I didn't do well in school. And so I knew I needed to do something, and I kind of saw it as my dad always said that college is a great experience for you to go and kind of be on your own and figure things out. I was kind of like, well, I could probably do that without spending the money. And I didn't make very much money at the camp, but it was still a good experience. So because my sister was there, I went there and, had some connections, but still, not enough to do much. And she was very busy with her job. So
that's cool. So this is really your first foray out, going out into your own, really sort of looking to get the lessons that you would had you had gone to college. But you're working at the camp, and you mentioned some lessons that you learned sort of watching another business owner sort of go through. Before we get into some of those lessons, because I'm sure there's some gems there, at any point are you thinking, all right, this is it. I figured out what I'm going to do in 2020 beyond for the rest of my life. It's going to be containers. Was it just the job at that point, or were you already sort of looking around the corner and thinking like, this is something that I could spend a significant portion of my life doing?
Yeah. So in Texas, it was the maintenance at the camp. But in Mississippi, with the containers,
That's Mississippi.
Yeah, I knew it was. I knew it was something that I could do, but at that point, I wasn't considering the future like I would now. Trying to think about raising a family and planning for retirement and paying a mortgage and that kind of stuff. At the time, it was just it was day to day, and so that probably had I known some of that, it would have shaped decisions then more as well, obviously. But yeah, as far as like looking at it as something that I could do, probably wasn't on my radar. It was more once I moved back to Virginia and started doing a, strenuous, labor-intensive job.
The masonry work.
Yeah, then I was like, okay, that was an easier job. I can probably figure out how to do that. And, because the shipping container industry, the suppliers are nationwide, if not global. And so, I still had, the phone number of my supplier who was the supplier in 2016 is also the supplier that I have now. Been working with her for 8 years. And so
oh, wow.
I've got a great relationship established with that company.
So you pick up some of the sort of tools, you're learning the business. First you were doing operations and maintenance, and then you go to Mississippi, you're getting more involved and sort of closer to a container. Still at this point, sounds like you were around 18 or so, still not necessarily something you would consider yourself doing full time, but you then move back to Richmond and then you jump into sort of masonry. And you mentioned sort of this is when it kind of hits you, like a ton of bricks effectively to say, all right, this is sort of where I think I got to pivot and figure out something else. What was it about the masonry job that kind of led you down this path of, I got to find something else?
Yeah. So, I started with the company as a laborer. And, both of them having known me for a while, I think that they knew that they would move me into a more logistics and, more management role eventually. They didn't tell me that, but they were, kind of hoping I'd get to that point. So started, and for the first year, not even the first year, for the first probably 6 months, all I did was a laborer. So the laborer, get to the job, and the masons, some of them will help. Most of them, it's not their job to help. They wait until the laborers have everything ready. So that's, all the brick or block or stone at their workstation and the mortar at their workstation. So there's a lot of moving parts that comes with that, and everybody has to do their job and their part. Not everybody wants to do that at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so once I had moved into the it was a little bit more and more of a manager role as the years progressed. So the first 6 months, they started to give me a little bit more responsibility. And with that, I took on the responsibility of, I really feel like it's my job to make sure that these guys get, what they need and can get started first thing. And so I just, I busted ass all day, every day. So that part of it, with feeling the responsibility of making sure that when I left the job site and I called the boss on the way home to tell him what we got done, that I felt good about what we as a team got done, and that I made sure that I felt good that I had done my part in that. But yeah.
And you're early 20s though at this point. I can't imagine. I've been on some of those sites. I had a role where I was a manager, a project manager. So effectively, the general contractor rolled up into me. I remember at times being uncomfortable telling grown men who'd been doing this job for 15, 20, 30 years how to do their job better. Was there any part of you that was ever uncomfortable sort of moving up the chain into this sort of leadership position when there were, I'm sure, individuals on the job site that were much older than you and kind of looking at you like, who are you, dude?
They absolutely did. I worked really hard. I know that there were times that they hated me, but I worked really hard to establish good relationships with them because they were all really great guys that I wanted to learn from ultimately. And so I wanted to make sure that I was respectful to them as professionals in their industry that they've been doing for some of them 30, some of them 40 years. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't go in. I had arrogant moments, obviously, but I worked very hard to not come in with this sense of arrogance of you need to do what I say kind of thing, because that wasn't going to get us anywhere. And so yeah, it was kind of it took years, and I still work on those relationships. I still see them periodically. If I'm driving down the road, I'll see them at a job site. I'll stop and talk to them, and but yeah, it was not easy. The boss, his name was Mike. I think he did a good job, giving me responsibility, and then backing up some decisions that I made. Where
Right.
he told me after the fact that he might not have agreed with my decision, but he told me that he would back me up if I made a decision, and
Right.
he, somebody else disagreed with it, he would show a front of, agree, and then he would say, hey, next time, this is probably how we do it. And I mean, he was the type where I could call him, we had a question about a job, how he wanted it done, and I had no problem just asking. And so I think that's another reason why he appreciated me, is because, I wouldn't just pretend like I knew what I was doing and make a decision. I'd call and I'd explain the situation. I'd send him pictures and say, hey, this is what we're dealing with.
Yep.
Ultimately, how do you want this to look? How do you want this to be done? And so, I mean, he was on site, often, but I mean, he had other crews that he was managing as well. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So you're learning game from pretty much all trades at this point. You're the youngest of seven, so you're learning from mostly your older sisters. I know your older brothers, the twins, were off to college. You moved to Texas. You're in operations and maintenance there. You transition into Mississippi. You finally sort of get into and start learning containers. And then you're sort of moving back to home at this point. You're in Masonry. Sounds like it's absolutely kicking your ass, though. I can imagine just how difficult sort of day in and day out. At what point does the light bulb go off and say, all right, I want to start at least setting myself up to run and work for myself, or sort of run my own business? And at the early stages, did you know it would be containers at that point?
Yeah, still at that point, even with the masonry company, I thought I was working towards, and I probably could have stayed and continued working towards, but I by the time I left there, I was second in the chain of command at the company, and so I could have stayed, and in 10 years, probably have had a much more important role than I did when I left. But at that point, I knew that I probably wanted to get a jump start on doing something for myself before that 10-year mark. And also, I mean, I've thought about this a lot recently. Just, I spend a lot of time driving for, deliveries. So I'll spend 4 to 8 hours in the truck every day. And I've been trying to kind of piece together, some of the lessons that I've learned, trying to make sure that things didn't happen, for no reason, to make sure that I remember the lessons. Thinking about working at the camp, thinking about working in Mississippi, and not so much a couple of the other jobs, but for sure at the masonry company. And those are just ones that I spent enough time where I was able to get in this role. Most of what I did was logistics. And it was kind of interesting to look back this year over the last 8 years and think, okay, that's what I've been most passionate about. That's what I've enjoyed doing the most is figuring out, all right, who's going to what job site? How am I getting materials to this job site? When am I bringing this container to that customer? That has been probably what makes me the most excited about those jobs. And current job is, I get to I get to make decisions and play out scenarios and try and be the most efficient that I can. And where it's small scale for other people, I love it because it just keeps me engaged. I love that I get to do that.
That's awesome. But you mentioned one thing that I don't want to breeze over. I know in my lifetime and career, I meet a lot of people who would not have done what you would have done. And to say, hey, I'm only 10 years out from kind of being close to the head honcho at this one company. I'll just stick it out. It's a safe thing to do. I know for sure I'll be able to provide. But you took a bit of a risk to sort of, make a 180 and say, no, I'm actually going to go into business for myself. Any difficulty in that decision? Was there any point in time that you said, you know what, Jack, let's just chill. Let's just go the safe route. Let's do something that I know how to do. I've been doing it for 5 years. Another 10 gets me to where I want to be. Any trepidations, any hesitations from you at all at that point?
No, because I think when I think what I had made up my mind, I did know. Both of my brothers are self-employed. One lives in Colorado now, and one's local. So I knew in my heart that I wanted to have something for myself, and so. With staying with the Masonry company, which was my plan for a while, it was still kind of giving up, something I forgot to mention. Before I moved to Mississippi, I was, I think 13 or 14. I bought my first lawnmower. I had the old truck that's sitting outside now that I bought back last year that Dad sold after I moved away. And I hired someone to weed eat and drive because I didn't have my license. And for from 13 to 17, I had a lawn care business every summer, and I loved cutting grass. For a long time,
you had a lawn care business before you could drive, though.
Yes, yeah, and for a long time, I really wanted that to be my story. Was that there was another business owner that is in Louisa County who has an amazing, huge lawn care company now that he probably started 15 years before me. And his story was that he started his business, couldn't drive, so I think his mom, or he hired someone drove him to his jobs, did all the jobs by himself, and now he's got a huge successful business that is one of the top lawn care providers in the county. And so cool. Yeah, for a long time I thought I was going to do landscaping, and then I kind of gave up a little bit of that when I moved. And then when I moved back home, kind of picked up doing it on the side again around year 2018 or 2019. And then when I quit working for other people completely, started my business, I opened two businesses. One was landscaping and concrete work, and one was containers.
Oh, wow. So there's a world where Jack is also, instead of Central Virginia Containers, it's, Central Virginia Landscaping.
Well, we had, it was Yardscapes LLC. Okay. And then, so that Yardscapes is the parent company of, at least right now, I think we're going to change it at the end of this month, is the parent company of, Central Virginia Containers is a DBA of Yardscapes. It was something that I already had all the tools for. So when I started and I, had done it more recently, I started doing landscaping and did a lot of it, and had a couple different guys work for me at different times, and it was mostly me and one other guy, spent. So I quit in 2023. I quit in 2024 in November, and so 2023, that's all I did. cut grass, did mulching jobs, did concrete jobs, did equipment, work, bush hogging and taking out trees with excavator, that kind of stuff.
Sorry, bush hogging, Jack. You got to tell me what bush hogging is. I have no idea what bush hogging is.
A bush hog is it's a type of mower, but it's a kind of a rough cut mower that goes on the back of a tractor that you could back over a huge briar bush and it just annihilates it. So
I know I don't look like it. There is a world where trust me, I was like fingernails dirty. I was getting it in yards, and my father was like a self-taught mechanic. So I used to do all that stuff. And then over time, I've just gotten like softer and softer and more office. I don't even cut my own grass today, so don't judge me too much. But so you've got the landscaping company. As a quick aside, though, you sounds like you were always an entrepreneur. Do you feel like you were born an entrepreneur, or was it watching older brothers sort of live their life as an entrepreneur that kind of gave you the bravery? In other words, do you think it's entrepreneurs are made or born?
I think it can be both, because there are people who, that I know of that didn't have any idea that they were going to start a company and started working for someone, and then at one point they finally got a wild hair and they were like, all right, yeah, I can probably do this. I don't need to work for someone else doing it. So I think it's both. You can cut this out if you want, but I just remembered another one.
Leaving it all in.
Okay. I just remembered I was probably 8 or 9 and I had a car washing business. And if you ask anybody that knows me, I am awful at washing cars. I hate it. I hate it so much, but it was something that I could do. And I made flyers and put them up at church and people that it was only ever people I went to church with. There's probably like 5 or 6 that summer that brought me their cars, and I washed it for $12.
Walking around with filthy cars.
Yeah, my brother. After I washed my brother's car, I think I did that for free. Or no, I think I washed Mom's Suburban. My brother came up and looked, and he's like, "Did you wash the roof?" And I was like, "Who can see the roof? I didn't wash the roof."
It's like nobody can see it. Why would I waste my time?
I can't reach that. Why would I wash it? So yeah, I do think for me, it was something I knew from a very young age that I knew the value of money. I knew the value of hard work. We live on a farm here, so growing up, I had a lot more time to keep up with the grass and the weed eating and everything like that. I spent most every day. Before the business, my summers, I cut the grass, a couple times a week just because I love doing it so much. So
that's cool.
I've always known that I like working, I like making money. And so I just looked for things that I could do, to put those together, which is not hard. And most, especially with, a lot of people don't like working. They like money. So exactly. If you were willing to work for the money, then you're already a step ahead.
I think I could not agree more. I think, so many people, they're always like, you've done this and then you've jumped and done that. And I think for most entrepreneurs, at least from what I found, is stories exactly like yours. Instead of, washing cars, I was selling candy at Costco. I'd get my mom to buy Costco candy. We also were one of the first people in my neighborhood to have a CD burner. So I, burn CDs. Sony, don't come after me, but I burned and sold CDs in high school for a while. So I'm like selling candy, selling CDs. I got the college, I'm selling shirts. If you're an entrepreneur, you will find a way to make money. You'll see the opportunity and you sort of just see the world a little bit differently than everyone else. You sort of see it in sort of dollar signs and opportunity versus like, oh man, I got to go out and, figure out how to do this job. It's like, oh yeah, figure out how to make some money, which I think is cool and pretty unique. But to go back into, all right, you start the company. It sounds like you quit in fall of 2022 to start going full time for yourself. You'd seen your brothers do it. So you sounds like you're pretty confident. Did you have a family at this point? Because I know for everybody, having a significant other and having some kids complicates the hell out of all of it and makes everything. It's just like doing life on hard or, playing on all Madden while still trying to pull it off.
Yeah. So we got married in 2020. Um, my first son was born in 2022 in May. Um, and that was a really big driving force for me to want to do something where I could be home more often. Because for the first from from May till November, I would leave at 5:45, 6 o'clock, and I'd get home at 6 o'clock.
Wow.
And I get that that's the norm for most people. I feel blessed that I am able to within reason dictate my own schedule. There are things out of my control, and there's deliveries that I need to make sometimes that are 13, 14-hour days that I'm not home every night for bedtime. But yeah, being able to be home more often for him has been probably, and it's been there are some aspects where the money was better, but it's an expensive thing to start, and it's hard to start a business. And so there's been a lot of aspects where the money has not been as good as when I was working for someone else. And so giving up that, steady paycheck and, consistent work, was it definitely weighed heavy, but being able to have breakfast with my son. Now I have two sons, and just knowing that I'll be able to take one or both of them to work with me a couple times a week as they grow up. That it would have been probably possible working commercial construction, probably not liked, and probably wouldn't have been able to do it as much. So even now, I take Micah. He's my oldest, and then Levi's he was born this year. He's my youngest. So I haven't taken Micah as much. He loves riding with me, but he's 2 and 5 months, and I want to make sure that he before I take him too many times, I want to make sure that I can ask him, say, "Hey, buddy, you want to ride with me? Sure. Yes, of course. All right, you're going to be in the truck for 8 hours." Like, I want him to understand what that means before he agrees to it, because that is such a long time for a 2-year-old to be stuck in a car seat. So I don't take him very often. There's logistically times that I have to, and he loves it. And I take him Chick-fil-A. We play in the playground for 30 minutes, so he stretches his legs, that kind of stuff.
That's amazing.
But and I wouldn't be able to do that working for someone else either. That kind of stuff. Totally. It's just. So yeah, that has been difficult, but the good has outweighed the bad. The other aspect, I was also blessed. First of all, meeting my wife, but her job. We have primarily lived off of her income, since I started the business, and so if not, for her and her support, probably would have already, stopped if I had a young family. And she didn't have that income, because that would have been very challenging. It might, I've also thought it could also have kind of encouraged me and kind of given me the swift kick I needed to go out and fight for it more, which is kind of interesting.
Was that the catch up, or what would have motivated you to do it more, or why a kick? Groceries and, bills to pay, you need to go make money. And so, where I haven't had that, as the same driving force, because, we have been able to live off her income. Right. She and I both know that that's something we obviously don't want forever. We would like to, rise above that, and, the company to be able to have enough, revenue that we can start, pulling money out of it and not having to try and keep it all in the business at the moment. Same all around. I always promise to my wife, her big joke, as I always say, babe, I promise when I make it big, like when Boxed Up blows up, I promise I'll, get the pool in the backyard and do all of these things, and you won't have to work anymore. But she works a steady job. She works for Microsoft, and exact same deal. None of this would be this. does not happen. This conversation doesn't happen without her, and it sounds like the same for your wife. So shout out to all the wives and all of the partners who are really the bones behind these businesses that are growing and scaling. So let's talk Central VA and kind of dive in. To your point, just getting started is hard enough. Establishing the business. There are people I know that just don't even fill out the paperwork because that is a hurdle. There are people, hey, I tell them, go to GoDaddy, go to Squarespace. Websites are $8.99 a year. They don't do that part. All right, so you get across all these hurdles. But then now, I think quite for a lot of folks, the biggest hurdle is financially. Dual income or not, it's not cheap it can be, but it's not cheap to start and get everything you need to get the container business off the ground because you've got to buy the containers. Sounds like you had a previous relationship, but then you also need the equipment to deliver the containers. What were kind of the early days and unpack a little bit about the start of Central Virginia Containers?
Yeah. So when I opened both businesses in November of 2022, container company had been open before that, but when I really started both of them and really picked them both up and kept running with them, I was doing landscaping, and then there was some people that I kind of started to try and do some advertising, but I didn't have a trailer. I had a truck that I could pull containers with, but I didn't have a trailer. And at the time, with how crazy inflation was, the trailer I needed was $26,000. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm not buying that right now. And so I subbed out the deliveries, didn't make very much money, because there's a cost the market will bear. And
just to unpack that, subcontracted the deliveries of the containers, right?
So so to still be within that margin of what I can charge and be reasonable and be similar to my competitors, I paid a towing company probably 45-50% of what I was charging, just because that was what it cost for them to bring it. Because the containers are in Chesapeake, which is 2 hours and 20 minutes from here, and then we deliver all over the state of Virginia. And so, for them to go down and get it, it costs, about right at 50% of what I could sell a container for. So the first year I didn't sell a lot of containers, and, had a hard time because if you don't inspect the containers upon pickup, they take it off the stack. And if you don't have the relationship with the forklift driver at the depot, you can get a container with a hole in it. And so then I'd get it, and then normally I'd get it straight from the depot and then take it to the customer, and then I have to deal with issues there. It just was a nightmare. So,
so where did you get any containers that you delivered? And it's like, there's no way I can actually sell this to the customer, or it's got a hole in it. What do I do?
Yeah. The only time that really happened, it was one that I was going to paint for one of my biggest customers. So I had it dropped off, I rent some space about, 15 minutes from here. And so I had it dropped off there, and I was getting ready to paint it. And so I was, taking the wire brush grinder and cleaning up the outside, and I found a slew of damage, a bunch of holes on the roof. So at that point, still having no money, I had to buy another container, have it sent up here, and pay the towing again, because it's most towing companies, say most 20-foot tow trucks, or wreckers, they can move 20-footers. But then for the 40-footers, there's a certain number of companies that actually have a 40-foot trailer that will work. And I had a good relationship with one there, but the rates are still what they are. And so I paid for them to bring it up here, and then so thankfully that one was on my rented land that I did not have to then get it moved again. I moved it a year later when I bought my trailer. So in December of 2023, a friend of mine, I was on my way to I don't remember if it was like a Christmas service at church, on a Saturday night. Somebody messaged me and said, "Hey, I just found this Kerbill. It's in West Virginia." And I looked at it, and it was a 2-year-old trailer for $12,000. And I messaged him, and I immediately was like, "I will come get it in the morning. Like, I'll skip church. I will be there." And they were like, "Well, there's 3 other people on their way, so if you can get here first." And, she's like, "You talked first. You reached out to me first." When I finally told her I was on the way, she's like, "There's some other people that I told them that you were coming, but they're on their way anyway." And so I woke up.
So now there's a race.
Yes. So I woke up early Sunday morning and raced to West Virginia to get the trailer, and it had been used and abused, and needed a lot of work. Still needs a lot of work, but it was a total game changer in actually being able to deliver the containers myself, pick them up, inspect them. If you can't do that, then it's very hard to ensure that you're getting a quality product to your customers because you're too far removed from it. And so that's one thing that's just been a game changer. Getting that, finding one, less than 50% of what a new one would be. And since then, I actually just bought a brand new 20-foot trailer about 4 weeks ago. And then upgraded my truck a couple weeks ago because I needed a bigger one. So yeah, that kind of stuff. It has been, without all that, I wouldn't be able to. Obviously,
congratulations, man.
You talk about startup costs. I mean, that's 100,000 or so, in just equipment to do it. It's just crazy.
And I was gonna say, is it debt? Is it leasing? Is it credit cards? Is it savings? Is it all the above?
Yeah. So the first one was personal savings that my wife was gracious enough to let me borrow from our personal account.
You paid her back yet?
Working on it. Yep, still working on it. And the 20-foot trailer was a loan, and then the truck was just like a dealership finance kind of thing. I would like to I spoke to a man about a month ago who he sold what is now a very large trucking company in Ashland, which is just north of Richmond. And he said for the first 5 years, it sucks. It's hand to mouth. It's, you get what you can get. He said, if you can make it past the 5-year mark, he said, you'll probably be all right. So that's just the trucking. And it's, the trucking industry is similar to this, but different. But I think in that way, it's going to be very similar, where it's for the first 5 years, it's going to be, it's just going to be grind, making sure that I get everything done.
I think that's any business, man. I mean, I couldn't resonate anymore. I think, funny you mentioned the loans. I remember days looking at the bank account my wife and I had, and it's just like, man, I got it made. And then you start a business and you're just like, all right, cool. We'll be good at some point. And then you need a cash infusion from the business. You run up a credit card. I have not completely paid my wife in our savings account back at all either. So same deal, man. Same deal. I think any business in those early years is just really tough. So it's awesome to kind of see you work through all of those things and kind of jump through all of those hurdles to ultimately get it to where you guys are. So congratulations on that. So it sounds like the first big hurdle is moving from a subcontracted delivery model to now you can deliver it. And it sounds like ultimately it paid off. Your brother kind of getting on you for not looking at the roof of his, washing the roof of his truck, to you now having to get on the roofs of these containers to inspect
I hadn't
them.
made that connection.
Everything comes around full circle. So that's pretty amazing. So I guess, we've got about 5 minutes left today. New truck. You've got a trailer. You're doing the deliveries yourself. It still sounds like 12, 14-hour days, still super long days, but you're getting it done, and you're sort of starting to see some of the fruits of your labor. What's next for you guys? Is it continuing to expand in the area? Is it just sort of growing the brand, growing the business? Sort of where do you see yourselves, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. In the next 5-10 years, my mind never never rests when it comes to like, what can I do next? What else can we grow into? And so, I have my landscaping trailers, or a landscape trailer and then another enclosed trailer. I've started renting those out. I'm trying to grow that side. There's a guy who, I'll give him a shout out. It's DFW Trailer Rental. I follow him on Facebook. I started following him when he had, I think, 2 trailers or 3 trailers. Now he's got 19. I talked to him on the phone a couple weeks ago. Super nice guy. And I just love seeing stuff like that, where, you start, you have this idea and you just start, and, you rent a trailer out for $200 for a week, and then you don't do anything else after that for a month. And it doesn't really seem like it makes sense. But then in 5 years, you look back and it's like, all right, yep, that was worth it. This was a good place to start. So I've started that. That's probably in the more 5-year mark. I'd like to have a few more trailers that I'd purchase and then have rented out. Those, keep looking. They'll be unboxed up hopefully by the end of the year.
There we go.
And then another thing that's probably closer to the 10-year mark, this would have to be after I have probably 1 or 2 drivers solely driving for Central Virginia Containers. Right now, we primarily sell. We're trying to get into a couple rentals. I'd love to be several rentals in 5 years. But then I'd love to start looking at dumpsters. Have a dumpster trailer with some roll-offs and get into that market as well, and also see those unboxed up soon. But yeah, I'd love to grow in those ways, and my mind always running.
I love
to
it.
the point where sometimes my wife will look at me and she'll be like, "All right, it's Friday at 6. Can we stop talking about this stuff now? Can we talk about something else?" And so, it's, I got lots of ideas, but those are probably the ones that are most likely to, get to the point where, you'll see them under the Central Virginia Containers brand, in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, it's the curse of the entrepreneur. The brain never shuts off. It never stops thinking. It's the same thing that gave you the ability to see the opportunity to start a landscaping company before you could even, before you had your license to drive, not that you couldn't drive, to start your container business, to now, be growing the trailer business. It doesn't stop because you lay down and go to sleep. And I've had to learn that hard lesson myself, and figure out ways to sort of slow down the sort of speed in Ferrari at nighttime, because it just, if you don't stop it, it'll just keep going. So it's awesome to see the plans that you guys laid out. So in no less than 5 years, we will come back. We rewind back to this point of the podcast and keep you honest, man, and make sure you're still kind of growing.
Maybe we'll have dumpsters by then. That'd be awesome.
I think so. I think that'd be cool. We launch our one of our first dumpster businesses in a couple of weeks. So I'll have to make sure to show that to you and also get the word out. Maybe finish us up on this last question. You look back at everything you did, what would you give to luck, or what would you give to hard work? I'm sure you've gotten some breaks, some things that have fallen in. It sounds like while you're driving, making deliveries, you do some reflecting, but sort of lightning round style.
Yeah.
How does that fall for you?
I think if I can, I'm going to change luck to blessings. I feel, truly blessed. There have been a lot of things in the last 2 years where, I can't do anything but look back at it and just feel like tremendously blessed that I am able to do this, that it's something I enjoy doing, that I hope I get to continue doing. That's a prayer of mine often, is just that, so August was our best month. And, just looking at that, and I just, it was, my prayer through that was, Lord, just help me to, not get too, engrossed with how well August was, but to keep my eyes and keep focused on, what I need to do next to be a good steward of what I've been given. So I think that it goes hand in hand, because at that point, if the hard work isn't there, then,
Yes.
The blessing wasn't, the blessing then wouldn't have been well placed. And so if I received the blessing and then I squandered it, then that's not what I need to do. And so I think it's hand in hand where, you have to work at it. You have to work hard at it. But it is ultimately, it's the blessings that have been given from up above, just, what I've been able to do.
That's so amazing to hear. I got to ask you this. I know that was supposed to be my last one. Do you ever get to a point where you say, all right, my cup runneth over. I don't have any more time or any more bandwidth for any more blessings. Is there any part of you that is just exhausted? Or do they give you more energy to just do the next thing, knowing that God will provide some way, somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, it doesn't make me tired. It's just, it's overwhelming to the point that I'm, that I'm able to, my wife and I talk about all the time when our boys grow up, there's a ministry that we work with called 8 Days of Hope. And they do disaster relief. They go in, a couple of different branches of the ministry, but one is that they go in within 72 hours of a disaster and then, do tree work and shovel out houses that have been flooded and that kind of stuff. They have a feeding ministry. I haven't helped with that yet, but then the one that we do mostly is the rebuild. And so it's, they do 8 days in, Amory, Mississippi was earlier this year, where a tornado came through and, caused mass devastation. That's, I would, the blessings for me would get this to the point where it's, sustaining on its own. And then I'd be able to go and spend a week or two doing something like that. Because that's, if I could go do that now, and do family life and, be a contributing member of society, I absolutely would. Just because it's something I really enjoy. So yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful way to end it. Jack, Central Virginia Containers, thank you for your time. Thank you for your transparency and vulnerability. This was awesome, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Last thing, but while we're still rolling, if you could say your name, your company, and just say, and I forgot how I did it. This is Jack with Central Virginia Containers, live on Built to Rent, or I forgot what I said. Crap. I'll do a better job at that. But maybe name, company, and I'm with Boxed Up on the Built to Rent podcast. There we go. Okay. We'll do that one.
All right. Sounds good. My name is Jack Fabling with Central Virginia Containers with Boxed Up on the Built to Rent podcast.